topic is achieving business continuity in times of uncertainty. My guest is Kris Michel. She's Chief Operating Officer with Flash Global. Hello, Kris.
Hi there.
So this is a big topic these days, obviously. What did you think? What did the previous year show us all in terms of business resiliency as everybody just tried to power through all the various aspects of this crisis?
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. We've seen our clients do a lot of investigation on this, self-inspection on this, and we've done it as well. It's really good to understand what we got right and then what we got wrong as it relates to business continuity planning.
Yeah, well, there's the big lessons to be learned, and that's what I want to talk about with you today. How would you say that people actually, in light of what the experience over the last year, how do people need to look at risk when it comes to managing a global supply chain?
Well, the complexity of the world we live in, I think, is what the pandemic year really brought in spades, right? There was a lot of research and keeping the asset up and keeping the physical space working, a lot of maybe myopic approaches to business continuity. And what we're seeing is that with our connected societies, our connected technologies, all of the things changing so rapidly, it's very difficult to look at one piece and come up with a plan and not really consider the ramifications across the entire complex system.
It seems obvious that business continuity would be a concern of businesses in general. You wouldn't have to teach them to care about it. And yet, indeed, we saw some breaks in continuity that I don't know, may have been or may have not been avoided. So going forward, do you believe that business continuity is now more of an important factor to companies, especially as it relates to risk and risk mitigation? Do you think that companies are waking up to that fact?
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't take an article or an interview to
Yeah.
have them waking up. They're losing sleep over this. But as I mentioned before, the complex nature of the world we live in was already at our doorstep with trade regulations changing and security risks changing. There were already things causing issues with continuity. Now, in the manufacturing supply chain, this already hit some folks, right, with tariffs or just talks of tariffs, weather disruptions like Hurricane Sandy. Some of these kind of jarred supply chains awake that weren't before. And there was a lot of activity around, are you sole sourced? Are you sole sourced in a region? Like, what do you do to mitigate that?
Mhm.
And what this last year taught us is it's well beyond the actual material supply chain, right? In our world, we live in a service world, right? And I think even the non-service worlds realize the human impact. You have entire supply chains of materials, but you also have human-powered aspects of your company that were disrupted, and not just for a weekend, for an outage. They were disrupted for a long time. So it's less about continuity and more about resilience and how can we create a system in a new world where you can adapt on the fly as you need to, and
Well,
not just wait out a long outage.
yeah. Well, let's talk specifically about the service supply chain because it is so critical to business continuity and business operations. What changes do you contemplate? Do you think that companies are contemplating in light of this past year? How might they better manage their service supply chains as, of course, as they grow, and indeed they will in the coming months and years?
Absolutely. I mean, the what we see in our client base pre-pandemic were priorities about what is the full customer experience? What is the end-to-end experience when we
Mhm.
sell a unit and then service the unit? How do we make that seamless? How do we use technology and investments in technology to make this happen? How do we align resources to better fit our longer term objectives? Those haven't changed. Those are still very much priorities of a service supply chain company. The difference now is safeguarding the business resilience, building in those kind of risk mitigation practices is precisely now what it's not a separate initiative. That's exactly what will enable a company to do the things they need to do because
Mhm.
the pace of change we were already seeing, as I mentioned. So it's less about building it for the now, but instead building it for how do we adapt to a constant changing cycle? Trade regulations just being one that we live with daily.
Right. And how do you spread that awareness throughout an organization as opposed to it being, as you point out, a discrete function in a little department tucked away somewhere on the corporate ladder? What do you recommend in terms of, should there be somebody within an organization who has oversight of that, or should it be propagated throughout the organization? I mean, companies are struggling, I guess, with this idea of like, who's responsible for this business continuity, especially in a service supply chain? I don't know. What do you think?
It needs to be across the entire organization.
Hmm.
So in our world, we have an incredible technology stack, but it's powered by people. We have a
Yeah.
lot of humans across our operation. And that's what most businesses kind of realized, how much reliance on middle office, back office processes that are human powered
Hmm.
that need to be taken into consideration for continuity planning, for resilience, for all the things we talked about. So it's less about, can we keep the data center up? Of course, that is important. But what are the key processes? What are the key enablers to our service? And coming at it from a process perspective to ensure the process can continue and not whatever the physical asset is that we need to recover because of
Hmm.
this.
But again, how do you drive that process through the organization? Again, it's important that everybody have this awareness, but I wonder at what level the organization is actually pushing this and getting that message through to everybody. Should there be a chief risk officer? Should there be somebody who is charged with at least getting the ball rolling so that it does go through the organization, or what?
I'm not an expert on organizational structure, and I'm not sure the appropriate structure to do that. I mean, I can
Hmm.
speak from our world, which is critical service spares. So, we all went through heck this last year, but on the one hand, we live it every day. The type of services and the type of response that we are entrusted and expected to provide has us kind of on high alert all the time. And
Yeah.
not just in those doing the actual physical delivery, but those enabling that service supply chain throughout. And I think that mindset, we're lucky again because we live it. We're not waiting around to have a critical thing happen. We
Yeah,
live it.
I was thinking that maybe the service of all aspects of an organization, the service supply chain is the one that was probably already aware of the importance of what we're talking about today. You didn't need to tell them about the need for business continuity and what to do in an emergency because they exist for that very reason. I mean, is that not the fact?
That's right. That's right. And we're
Yeah.
seeing more and more of our customers come to us, not just looking for logistics capabilities, but looking for that holistic approach to risk management.
Hmm.
Help us understand how risky our current service supply chain is, where it can be mitigated, where we can alleviate and prevent any of those possible disruptions along the way so that they can do the things that we talked about, deliver this end-to-end seamless service supply, product supply, entire experience for their end customer.
Do you think companies are making different decisions now as opposed to where they source this material and where the people are who are responsible for overseeing it?
Sure, but those decisions were already being made in terms
Yeah.
of diversifying supply base, diversifying people. We have a global team, and we've had already a lot of remote working staff. So we're lucky enough to kind of know some of this, right? We
Hmm.
we knew that if humans are a part of our machine, if you will, we need to understand the operating conditions that our humans are under, right? Where they are, how they live, do they get their energy source, right? Do they have internet? We were lucky enough, if that's, I can't even say that during a pandemic, we were lucky enough to already have figured some of this out so that
Hmm.
when all of this hit, we didn't really miss a beat. I mean, certainly we were jarred as everybody else, but the processes and the people that we had in place continued to
Yeah,
operate.
but you're in an industry where that, like I say, that awareness is already sort of there. But it's
But doesn't
interesting.
necessarily,
Go on. I'm
sorry,
sorry.
yeah, so I was going to follow on that,
Yeah.
but our industry may live it, as I mentioned, but that doesn't mean that those middle office or back office call center order fulfillment centers, that doesn't necessarily mean those were globally located.
Mhm.
were skilled and cross-functionally skilled and trained and established such to handle this kind of a disruption.
I see. Well, thank you, Kris. I really appreciate this discussion about the importance of business continuity in times of uncertainty, especially as it regards to the service supply chain. I would like at this point, however, to turn to a discussion specifically of Flash Global. And you started to allude to this, but I'd like more details as to how Flash specifically overcame challenges and enabled business resiliency in 2020 during a global pandemic.
Well, as you mentioned, I already kind of talked to that again because this is the life we're living. But yeah, we operate in over 140 countries globally. We have to respond in less than 90 minutes in many cases.
Mhm.
So, and we have again a reliance on the human aspect of these services that we very much had in focus before the pandemic, and then of course had in focus during. Even with our global teams, even with having skilled resources where we needed, we even saw that we had some areas where we needed to quickly make sure we retooled as needed. We had the scope in terms of capabilities, again, with our human teams where we had them. And we were able to react quite quickly. Again, I think because we already live in this reactive critical spares environment. And
Yeah.
if back to what I was saying about, not building for the requirements of today,
Mhm.
but building for the requirements to change has been a different kind of a mindset that we started a couple years ago. We invested quite heavily in our technology around security as well as trade management, not for the needs of the day, but knowing that these areas would continue to evolve, and our ability to adapt quickly is what resiliency is.
Well, as you say, these investments were already underway a couple of years ago. And really, the whole rationale for your existence as a company is business continuity and management of emergency materials and service supply chain. But your own experience of the last year, in what way, if at all, has it changed your own direction and your own thinking? Have you doubled down on what you were doing before? How have you personally reacted as a company to the experience of the last 12 or 14 months?
Um, we definitely were on the right direction. And
Mhm.
I think seeing our position as an extension of our customers' supply chain has helped us re-energize our existing focus. Our customers are coming to us now, not just for, as I mentioned, for our capabilities. They're looking for peace of mind. They're looking for us to be an extension of their risk mitigation, of their business resiliency, of their future proofing of their service supply chain. And that's a completely different mindset.
Yeah.
Customers, not just customers of ours, but customers in our industry, they're looking for alliances, right, with business partners. They're looking to, as I mentioned, align their resources for what makes sense. And so seeing us as more of a part of that, again, reassures us that we're on the right path in terms of the kind of, we're not just providing a transactional service, we're an extension of their security, of their trade management, of future proofing their service supply chain.
Well, if there's anything we can guarantee, it's that the future is not going to be less risky, and that type of mindset that you're experiencing and that you're describing me today is going to just be ever more crucial for companies going forward. Kris Michel, Flash Global, thank you so much for talking to me today about the whole issue of business continuity, as well as a little bit about Flash Global itself. Thank you for being with me today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.